It is a beautiful October morning and I am up bright and early. It's actually still a little dark. On camera it looks light outside, but it was still almost dark this morning. I wanted to get straight out to the garden and start harvesting my carrots. So I planted these carrots for my fall crop, and I really want to get these out of here before our frost hits. And really, we were supposed to have a frost by now. We usually have our first average frost around October 20th, and it has not happened yet. Maybe in the lower parts. We live on a big hill, so we don't get much frost like in the lower valleys around us. So that's kind of the advantage living up here on this hill. But I planted these carrots this fall, and I've already planted some in the spring, and I took all of the ones from spring and I canned them all up so they're put away in my pantry. So these ones, I have different plans. I'm just literally going to bag them up and put them in my refrigerator. I'm not even going to wash them. I'm just going to put them straight into a bag. And we actually ended up getting an extra refrigerator for our garage. We've been needing one for years, and I am so happy that we found this refrigerator. It's actually the same brand of refrigerator that we have in our home, and the one that we have in our home is going on 20 years old, which they just don't make refrigerators like they used to. So I saw the same brand at a thrift store. It was for sale. It was kind of pricey, but I knew the brand would probably be really good. Since the one we have in our home right now is going on 20 years old, I wanted to get the same brand. But I am so excited because now this is just going to be a game changer for us. I can put all of my garden vegetables inside this refrigerator and store them properly. And now that I sell vegetables, I need some space whenever I clean them and package them up before I sell them. It's just nice to have a refrigerator at a certain degrees on some of my vegetables. And not only just for my vegetables, but my sourdough. I make a lot of sourdough bread, so I have room now to ferment a lot of sourdough loaves. And we have 16 chickens right now, so they're all laying right now, so we get a ton of eggs every day, and I'm just so happy to have all this space to store all of this in there. And also, whenever we have our family come over for get-togethers, whenever they bring food that needs to be chilled, we always never have room in our home fridge, and this just is going to be so great to have whenever we have gatherings. Sometimes we have Bible studies at our house, and a lot of people just, bring salads or fruit salads or whatever they have that's cold. It's just such a game changer now. And I don't have a root cellar, so this is actually kind of acting like a root cellar for me now. I would love to have a root cellar eventually. I know in my previous video I talked about how we just have bad storms every year, and it'd just be a great thing to have a storm shelter slash an area where I can store up a bunch of my vegetables. But that's just future. I'm hoping one day that we could put one in, but for now I'm glad to have this refrigerator. So enough about the refrigerator. Back to the carrots. I planted two ways this year. I did inside the garden bed, and I planted in the ground. So it's really weird though. This spring the garden bed didn't do as well, and when I grew in ground it did really well, and then it kind of flopped. So this fall the ones in ground didn't do so well, and the ones in the bed did really great. So I have no idea what's going on there. I'm coming up on, I need to test my soil. It's been 3 years. Definitely going to do that this coming spring, is test a bunch of areas in my garden and see what kind of soil amendment I need. You need to do that every 3 years, and I highly recommend testing your soil. If you want to be successful at growing a garden, you definitely need to test your soil every 3 years, just so you know what's going on in the soil, if it's lacking anything or if it has too much of something. That's just the way to go. I've learned that early on. I know a lot of gardeners skip this, or they don't really know whenever they start out to do this. I'm telling you, it's just the best thing that you can do whenever you're starting a garden, is definitely go to your extension office in your hometown if you have one. Mine is actually a lot cheaper than going online and finding a company. It's way cheaper, and they give really good results, and they tell you exactly what to add to your soil. So every spring I just add my soil amendments, and usually it's just calcium for my soil. So I just add just like a little bit of calcium to all of my rows and beds. My stuff grows really well. It took me many years to figure this out, because whenever you start first gardening, you just throw stuff in the ground. You don't really know much of anything. But I've learned if you just focus on your soil and the health of it, your stuff will grow really well. Healthy soil, healthy plants, that's my main focus every single year. So I'm just raking back a bunch of these leaves. I do not want leaves getting tilled into this row, just because leaves will rob my nitrogen, because leaves just take forever to break down, and I'm just raking them away, getting them out of the garden for now. And then I'm going to throw a cover crop in these rows. Now the cover crop I have today is buckwheat. That's all I have on hand right now. I need to drive a couple towns over, which it takes like an hour to get there. This is where I buy my cover crop. I love using peas and oats for my winter cover crop. I just ran out of it, so here in the next week or so I need to run up there and buy some of that. But for now I'm going to get buckwheat growing in these rows. It's just another way to keep my soil healthy, is always having something growing inside the soil. You never want to leave your rows bare, because your soil will just dry out and there'll just be no life in your soil. So I like to keep roots growing down into the soil, because it attracts worms, and microorganisms like to feed on the roots. I always just like to keep it covered. It's not always the case. You can see some of my garden beds need a cover crop in them. I have green beans actually growing in one of these garden beds, and I'm letting it all go to seed before we get our frost. That'll be my seed for next year. So a lot of these still have stuff growing in them, and I actually can keep my green beans in this bed all winter. It's gonna provide nitrogen in the soil all winter if I keep these beans growing inside of these beds, even though they're gonna die off when the frost comes. That's the cool thing about beans and peas. So once the plant dies off through the winter and you keep the roots in the soil, it'll release nitrogen into the soil, and then next year whatever plant I decide to plant in the spot where the beans were, that plant can use that nitrogen, and I believe it's called nitrogen fixation. So that's why I like to use peas as a cover crop in the fall, because no matter where I plant my peas, it'll release that nitrogen after the winter kills off the peas, and it just releases back into my soil. And it's actually really nice because I don't have to amend my soil so much. Actually, coming to think of it, I think I threw in some extra leftover peas in with the buckwheat, so we are good for winter. So I'm just taking some bread bags that I get at Walmart, nothing special, and I'm taking all these carrots, and I'm just gonna store them in these bags with the dirt on. So whenever I go to use these carrots, I will just scrub them down, wash them before I use them. So I just take off the leafy tops of the carrot because it'll pull the moisture from the carrot if you don't do this. I will not wash them, like I said, and I will store them in the bag, a sealed bag. This will just help control the humidity in the bag, and I will place them in my crisper, and then I'll just keep checking on them. I think they last up to 2 to 3 months in the refrigerator. Just, you got to keep an eye on them so they don't go moldy or anything like that, or spoil. And you don't want the carrots to dry out. That's why I like to keep a little bit of moisture inside the bag. So I will focus on using these carrots up first, just because they're in the refrigerator, and then we'll switch over to our canned carrots from spring. And I like to make a lot of soup. I will probably actually use these ones to make a lot of broth. I like to make chicken broth. I want to stock up for winter, so I will be doing that soon. I like to use my Instapot to make a lot of broth, and I have a ton of bones that I have in the freezer to make all of this. So a lot of these carrots will probably go into my chicken broth. So this actually may not look like much, but if you plant carrots in the spring, plant carrots in the fall, and you plant winter carrots, you got your spring carrots, your fall carrots, and then winter carrots usually just stay in the ground and you just go outside and pull them because it's cold outside and it acts like a refrigerator. So you got like 3 different times to harvest carrots, and all of this adds up. So we canned our spring carrots, and then our fall carrots we're just putting in the fridge, and then I actually have a few winter carrots outside in one of my beds. Now something ate half of them whenever I planted them and they started sprouting up. I have something that I need to figure out what was eating all of my fall crops this year, but I have some of them out there. So that's just a great way to stock up your carrots for winter, is planting 3 times through the year. So I've come to like the variety Danvers 126. Seems to do really well in my garden. Now I do have a previous video on growing different carrots and what did well, what didn't. There's a few other ones that do pretty well in my garden, but it seems like Danvers does really well. And the farm store that I get all my seeds from, they sell them really cheap in bulk, so I get them really cheap every year when I go and gather my seeds. And we really like a sweeter carrot. My kids love going out and gathering carrots and washing them off and eating them fresh. And we just seem to like the sweeter carrot, and Danvers has that flavor of sweet. And the flesh of it is tender, and it can handle heavy clay soil, so it's kind of easy to grow wherever, and it stores up really well. So I just have a lot of these seeds just because I get them in bulk at the farm store that I go to, and that's what I had on hand this fall, so that's what I planted. Well, that is going to wrap up this video today. I hope you guys enjoyed this carrot video, and I hope it encourages you to grow carrots next year and stock up for winter. And don't forget, every little bit counts. But I hope you guys have a great day, and we will see you guys next week.